It is Friday, April 12th, and it's officially time to wake up. Welcome, Damon Bruce, Larry Krueger. Like and subscribe, all of those good things. Larry, good morning. I see you're already pounding water. I got the coffee working.
Yeah, good morning. Off and running. Big day today. Couple streams, some radio. It's going to be a big Friday. Big Friday.
It's the complete opposite of how my Friday looks like. We might have about 15 minutes together. We'll find out. Both Jack and Ozzy are home from school today. Jack on spring break. Ozzy blew chunks all over the living room when he got home yesterday. I mean, he threw up like he was in college. And he's a little under the weather. Jillian is not here right now, so I got a 4.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old holding it down in front of a streaming marathon of Bluey on Disney Plus. So pray for me, America. And I'll tell you that my 11 o'clock show has already been canceled. My lunch plans with Jack already canceled because Ozzy is here. And I'm telling you, it's always great when a kid gets sick when your wife's out of town. Just perfect timing, boys.
Only thing worse is if you had a dog and the dog had the runs.
That would be it. I mean, that is kind of the only way this could get worse. So in the name of I do not know how much time we have together here, Lawrence, I want to hop right in and I want to pick your brain. We'll get into the fact that they signed Rocky Sin, an interesting signing, a fantastic name, and we'll get to that in a second. What I want to start with, though, is what you saw at local pro day. We talked on Wednesday. You were heading down to Santa Clara. That's my very first question. Tell me all about it. What'd you see? What'd you learn? What'd you feel? What'd you taste? What'd you smell? Take me there.
Yeah, it was one of the worst fields of prospects I've ever seen in a local pro day.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, and it really just speaks to the fact that locally our college football is crap. Compared to the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, Cal's down, Stanford's down, San Jose State actually sometimes will put out some decent players. But for the most part, those are the three biggest schools in our region, and they're all not that great. And it wasn't a stellar year. I mean, I did a video on the 5 most impressive guys from the pro day, and I had to really dig deep to find the 5 guys. Austin Jones, the running back who played at Stanford, who transferred to USC. I talked to him after practice. He went to Bishop O'Dowd. He's kind of interesting. He can catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit. 4.58 40. He had a big day against UW this year. Good vision, smallish back, but maybe a guy they could sign after the draft. You had Terrell Owens' son, Tariq Owens, who's interesting just because he's Terrell Owens' son and he's 6'3", 200 pounds and really looks the part, but he's a late bloomer, didn't even play high school football until his sophomore year in high school, didn't really get going until his senior year in high school, and I don't know, he's definitely not a draftable prospect. He's an undrafted free agent. Then there was a corner from U of A named Dylan Wyatt, he's an Oakland kid who's 6'1", about 180 pounds. He looked pretty good, to be honest. And Kellen Mond was there trying to maybe be the 4th quarterback behind Purdy, Dobbs, and Allen. And he just looked okay. I mean,
Larry, I saw today that he signed with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, he didn't look great. I mean, he didn't throw strikes. It wasn't like he was accurate all day. He didn't throw with a lot of velocity. And then I would say the best player on the field was a guy named Chigozie Ananuzium, who's a corner for Colorado State, who looked, fast. He looked sudden. He's 6'1", he's 200 pounds, and he's probably an NFL caliber training camp corner. But that's it. I mean, the rest of it was, future XFLers or something. I don't know. I mean, at least unless I was wrong and there was somebody out there that I just didn't see. I didn't study the D linemen that much because they were in the corner of the field. We weren't given access to the whole field, just like sides of it. So, it was not. And I've been to other pro days. This is the weakest group. It has nothing to do with the Niners, of course. It has everything to do with college football in this region. But yeah, that was it. It was not, you didn't miss much. I'll say that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad I didn't miss very much. I think that you're you've been to enough of those things to know when a diamond does start sticking out of the rough. If you're telling me you didn't see, rubies, much less any diamonds in the rough, I'll believe you. There's not a lot of local pro day headlines that turn around and start mattering once a football season starts. So let's talk about the one other headline that the 49ers have posted for us since we talked on Wednesday, and that is they've signed Rock Ya-Sin, who's a 27-year-old 5'11", 195-pound corner who's a 5-year NFL vet. He was a second rounder back in 2019 to the Colts, Larry. And I can tell you, they were very excited on him at first. They had grand plans for Rock Ya-Sin, but he never quite lived up to the billing and the excitement that, the first 8 weeks of his career provided. Then he kind of regressed back into the NFL mean a little bit. After 3 years in Indianapolis, he moves on to the Raiders. He moves on to Baltimore. He's good. He's not great, but he's got an awful lot of NFL reps on his body, Larry, and I'm thinking about this coming season, and I don't know how many spots where a new guy who's never done it before is really going to be able to offer help to the 49ers. Having said that, Rock Ya-Sin adds depth without now changing any sort of draft day options in any way, shape, or form for the 49ers. If the corner that they want is still there at 31, Rock Ya-Sin has now not changed that decision. He adds depth, but like you said, Larry, it's already kind of a deep room with a lot of guys in it. They're still looking for the guy. I don't think Rock Ya-Sin is the guy, but he is a guy who has played an awful lot of NFL football, and I think it's a good signing.
Well, there's a saying among football guys, among football guys, David, there's a saying among us football guys that you can never have enough corners. It's kind of a corner in the NFL is like starting pitching in baseball. You can never quite have enough. That being said, I don't expect a lot out of Rock Ya-Sin. He's been dinged up a lot. It's funny. I was at my son's baseball game at a little Northgate Akalani's yesterday, and the Cobra, Matt Mayoko, was there because his neighbor is the shortstop for the Akalani's, whatever they are, and so I had a chance to sit there and talk to him, and he didn't think much of it just because of the injury factor. I liked Rock Ya-Sin at Temple. He's a Georgia kid from Decatur, Georgia. He's a great athlete. He's almost got the prototypical size, strength, everything. He was good at Presbyterian, transferred to Temple, and has floated around to a number of spots. But, you always have to wonder, and this is not a football thing. This is a life thing. If you're doing interviews of anybody and they've spent, they've got 7 jobs on their resume in the last few years, question why everybody lets go of them. Don't question why everybody keeps signing them. It's kind of like Edwin Jackson or, Glenn Allen Hill in baseball. It's like they've played for everybody. Why? Well, because they're a power arm or a power bat, and yet they're incredibly flawed. And so people sign them because of their power potential and cut them because of their flaws.
Right.
This guy's been hurt a lot.
There's something about them that is unquestionably that's pro quality, but there are enough flaws to keep moving on. I mean, we said the same thing kind of about Steve Wilkes' coaching career, right?
Exactly. This guy played with the Colts. He played with the Raiders. He played with the Ravens. He barely got in last year. He played, I think, in week 18. That was his only start of the year. But that all being said, he's still 6 feet, 195, very strong, good back pedal, has some coverage ability, has plenty of physical talent. There's no question about it. And we'll see. Between him and Isaac Yiadom, they've added a couple pieces at corner. One of the guys in my chat or in my Twitter timeline said, when I see the signing of a corner, it makes me think that they're kind of they're the signals that there may be a trade up scenario coming for the Niners, because they seemingly are filling a lot of their holes with free agents, and maybe they're thinking of moving a number of picks to move up into the first round for like one great player. And I could see that. Now the debate is who's that one great player. And a lot of people think that it might be the Napa kid, Brock Bowers. And that's interesting because, they haven't really added a tight end. And Bowers is one of the great tight ends to come out in years. He's a fantastic prospect. He's 21. He had, this
Well, that's
guy's
like the consensus first tight end off the board, Larry. I mean, if they're trading up for Brock Bowers, they got to get into the, that 8 to 12 range for him, don't they?
Well, possibly. I think part of the reason that you've heard Lynch say, well, I don't know, we don't know about, if we want to move Ayuk until draft day, is they want to see who falls. And there's a chance that a tight end falls. And just simply because there's quarterbacks and other, offensive linemen, people with more severe needs. And we'll see. Brock Bowers could go 5th overall, or he could be there in the middle of the first round. And if he's there in the middle of the first round, maybe they're eyeing a trade up.
So I read Dave Lombardi's piece in the article. Dave, friend of ours, we admire his work. We think his opinion matters. He's got the 49ers swinging a big trade. He's done a mock draft through several rounds. We won't go too deep into it, but he's got the 49ers trading 31, their first rounder, 94, their third rounder, and 135, which is their compensatory fourth rounder for the Trey Lance pick from Dallas, and next year's second rounder.
Wow.
To move up to 18 with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's, and again, the fact that it sounds like an awful lot to give. Like, I'm surprised you 3 picks doesn't get you to move up a few slots in this draft. In this draft, you'd have to throw in a second rounder for next year too. But this is what Dave has concocted. And he also says that getting in front of Cincinnati at 18 it's a legitimate dance partner, because Cincinnati is open maybe to, a little business there. And it would get you in front of the Rams at 19. In the way that the Rams have been collecting offensive linemen, the 49ers could then jump in front of them to maybe take, and Lombardi's pick is Washington left tackle Troy Fautanu. So you and I have been talking about him. I know he's a prospect that you like very much. After the Dave Lombardi article, you read about a player and you put his name into YouTube and you start watching, the highlight reel. Larry, we've talked about how the 49ers are at their very best when they play with an element of violence. He's a violent football player. I'll give you that much. Talk about all the physical traits. There is violence jumping off that screen. It's not enough for him to block a guy. He wants to pancake the entire world. It's not enough to meet a player downfield. He wants to bury them in the yard line he drops them in. I mean, he's angry all the way to the ground with his opponent. I'll give him that much. What do you think of an aggressive move to move up to 18 at Cincinnati for a guy like Troy Fautanu?
Well, I love Fautanu. He looked great. I mean, he was
an interesting show today.
Yeah.
We got Ozzy.
Look at that guy.
We got Ozzy.
And this is the guy that was blowing chunks.
Ozzy threw up like he had been drinking for the last 5 hours at the Dubliner on West Portal.
Well, don't let him go to the Dubliner. I mean, what are you guys thinking?
Dubliner's a sponsor of the Damon Bruce show. All Bruce children are allowed in the Dubliner.
The kid's got some serious blonde hair, and I don't remember seeing. Were you a blonde kid?
We've DNA tested. They are mine. But yes, this is a better looking child than most assume I would produce.
But I will say to you and to him, this is a academic honor roll. This is a guy who played, offense and defensive line in high school. I really like Fautanu. I think he can play a lot of different spots. He's kind of a destroyer, there are bigger, rangier, longer offensive linemen, but this guy really is I think Seattle could really want him, just from they're rebuilding their line. And I think this guy fits in at a lot of spots. I mean, in a lot of ways, if you're going for a rookie lineman, this might be your guy. Why? Because he's polished, I think, and ready to play. And I think you could plug him in at right guard, right tackle.
He could guard. You could be your right guard now. He could be your right tackle now, and he could be your left tackle of the future when Trent is all said and done. So it's
I don't know if he's a left tackle. I don't know if he's a tackle. I mean, most of these tackles are like 6'6", 6'7". He's like 6'4". But you know what? I think he's a very, very good player right now.
It's got that Samoan strength, Larry. I'll give you a few inches off a frame for a stocky Samoan level strength.
Well, he's smart. He's tough. He's incredibly physical. He the way he moved at the combine really stood out from the other offensive linemen. I mean, this guy's full tilt at 3 steps, and I that would be intriguing. That would be intriguing. I don't see that happening because I think there's enough offensive linemen in this draft beyond the top guys that you don't need to make that kind of move. But I also kind of view the 49ers as having more needs than maybe others do. And, I think defensive tackle, they lost Eric Armstead. They brought in Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott.
No.
They don't have a big time defensive tackle there. I mean, they're built on having a big time defensive line. So I would say defensive tackle, they need a body for sure. I mean, a significant player. I think they need a high ranking corner. I think they need maybe a safety or 2. I think they need a tight end. I think they, there's a lot of needs there for the 49ers, I think, but they do, trading up for a polished offensive lineman is not a bad route to go.
He's got Lombardi does Oregon defensive lineman Brandon Dorlus, who's already had a 30 visit with the 49ers. He played across the entire defensive line for the Ducks. He's a little bit of a versatile player, and Kasurik could see him, as Lombardi writes, as an exceptionally athletic interior rusher. Batted down 13 passes in college, by the way. So that's good instinct. He leaps, he jumps, he makes plays. He was tracked on a GPS tracker running 21 miles an hour. He's 283 pounds. So he flies for a big boy. We have talked an awful lot of offensive linemen, defensive linemen. We have yet to use the name Brandon Dorlus. What do you think made him jump out to Lombardi, Lair?
Well, I mean, I just think this is a good player all the way around. I mean, he's he's a Florida kid who's like right in that mid range. Is he a D end? Is he a D tackle? You could probably use him on either spot, and he'd be good. If you want to reignite your NASCAR package and start playing a few more games up front, as far as stunts and twists, you could line this guy up inside and rush him outside. You can line him up outside and rush him inside. He's a terrific athlete for sure.
And a little bit later on in the draft, only because you and I were talking about him on Wednesday. And it's funny, when you read somebody's mock draft and they've got a late round pick that you've been talking about, it's like, oh, we think alike. I like that. It's like when you find out somebody likes an obscure band that you listen to in college, you're like, oh my God, we're alike. He was talking about the 49ers coming back in the 4th round, maybe the 5th round, a day 3 pick for Caden Wallace, the tackle out of Penn State that we were talking about on Wednesday.
Well, and they looked at him, and Wallace, I'm a big fan of Penn State's program as far as the way they develop their football players. And Wallace is interesting. I think he's a guy that could be a guard or a tackle down the road. And he is part of that second. That's what I'm saying when I'm talking about, the lack of urgency to trade up for, one of the top 5 or 6 offensive tackles. It's because I like that secondary group. And that group includes, Christian Jones, Blake Fisher, Javon Foster, Ladarius Henderson, Garrett Greenfield, and Caden Wallace. And, so Wallace is, 6'5", 325. There's some stiffness in his game. He's a New Jersey kid, but and he's a little rocked up. I mean, he's definitely strong. 6'5", about 330. And I like his potential, but he's a little on the stiffer side, which is why he's going to be there in the 3rd round, 4th round, maybe a late day 2, early day 3. But he's a smart kid and he's a physical kid. So I kind of like Caden Wallace.
Let's see. As you can see, I've got a ticking time bomb behind me, Larry. So I can feel the show running out of time right now, at least on my side of it. You want to keep going, you go right ahead. The only other football thing, other than us just, openly discussing what we think could happen in the draft, and the truth is that conversation could be we think anything. I mean, we just don't know. That's just. Can I bring this upstairs? Yes, you can bring that upstairs. Are you going to go upstairs? All right, buddy. I'll see you.
Look at that.
A little bit. Larry, we just
made a deal.
Just bought ourselves a little time.
Can I bring this upstairs? You absolutely can bring that upstairs.
Absolutely bring that upstairs.
And feel free to stay there.
Yeah. Yeah. Daddy's spending time with Uncle Larry. Okay. So the other thing that I was going to bring up was
I just want to say that back in the day, now my kids are my youngest is 14, so it's been a while.
They're young men.
But back in the day, a Caillou marathon, what I did is back in the day when you could have those DVDs that just kept repeating itself, or they had all kinds of different episodes on there. Just go Caillou marathon. Here we go. That wimpy kid with the shaved head or whatever it was, and he would just, Caillou, and then another Caillou, and then another Caillou, and pretty soon, you've got your conference call done. You pretty much could do anything. You could even have relations. You could have. I did not have relations with that woman. You can have relations during a Caillou marathon. It's an amazing thing. I should send it to you for Christmas.
That's how you get more people to sit in front of a Caillou marathon with those relations that you're having. So I'll tell you,
I did not have relations with that woman.
For the kids now, for the generation that's happening now, it's all about Bluey. Bluey's
the guy.
It's from Australia, and it's a family of sheepdogs. And honestly, of all the kids crap that is on my TV, I'm most happy to see Bluey up there because it's like it's got a heart to it. It's about parenting. It's wholesome. Bluey works on a lot of levels, Larry.
We were big on Barney. Do you remember Barney?
I remember Barney. Barney was
Teletubbies. Are you familiar with Teletubbies?
I'm familiar with Teletubbies. Yes, I am. Again, that was not in my childhood rearing or part of my childhood, but I was aware of them. The same way that I think, people who don't have kids or aren't watching kid cartoons are aware of Bluey. Like Bluey's crossing over into the American lexicon conversation, I think. It's that important of a show. Oh, guess who's back? We knew that was going to happen. So again, I recommend Bluey. Definitely a day one pick, Larry. Bluey honestly right now isn't even falling out of the top 5. If you can get Bluey past the 5th pick in this draft, take Bluey. You run that pick to the podium.
Bluey had a wrestling background. He's got a high GPA. He's got good arm length.
Bluey's a she, by the way. It took me 3 seasons to realize.
In today's world, does it really matter? I mean, really, Damon, at this point, does it matter if Bluey's a she? What really matters is the arm length in the ACL. Does Bluey have a good couple ACLs? I mean, that's what I'm looking at. In fact, I wrote in an envelope, Barney, and I took out the envelope in the 3rd round, and he was already off the board. He went to the Titans, Damon.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Okay. Those are packages that you shouldn't be handling. Just put those down. Tom Brady talked about how if an NFL team called him late in the year, he would think about playing quarterback again. Does this man just want to light the world on fire and watch it burn? What the hell's that?
Just pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. It's like, no, dude, you're done. It's okay to be done. It's not an attack on your self-worth or your career as it sat. But he's 47. I mean, he was, he already got every ounce of every possible everything out of his career. He should just be satisfied with that. He's 47 or 48 at this point.
You know what it is, though? Dude, these guys it's like the scene in Heat when they're talking about the final score and how dangerous it's going to be. And the one character turns to Robert De Niro and he says, forget about the score. I'm just in it. I'm in it for the juice, Neil. I'm in it for the juice. And that's what these guys get so addicted to competition. They're so addicted to that locker room lifestyle, being one of the guys, and it's hard to put it down. I remember I used to go lean on the top step of the dugout at 24 Willie Mays Plaza when the park would be shutting down at the end of the night. I would have hosted a sports phone. It's over at midnight, and I'm leaning. I would walk back into the park, and I would just lean on that top dugout step thinking, dude, if I could hang on to a major league career, you'd have to pry it from my cold, dead hands. Like, this is just awesome. I would stick around and not retire gracefully. I would just be a part of this as long as I could. Okay, don't cut our friend Ike in half. Thank you very much. I got my cardboard cut out of Ike's. By the way, eat at Ike's today, everybody.
Keep him away from the ganja jar.
So the ganja jar, I never tell lies to my audience. It's empty. We've emptied it out. It's a ceremonial ganja jar.
This is a sad stream, man. It's like all my rowdy friends have settled down.
Look, I'm telling you right now, I got more weed in my house than you had in your fraternity house right now. I'm a 49-year-old man with weight, but I'm not moving it. I'm just keeping it in a safe location.
Look at you.
That's it, Larry. I can see the breakdown coming. I can feel
no
it.
No comments about OJ. No Warriors.
My final question to you: where were you during the Bronco chase? Because that's an everyone remembers where they were moment. If you were old enough to be a part of it, where were you for the Bronco chase?
It's so funny because I heard on the radio yesterday a couple guys talking about where were you for and they were into the OJ thing, but they were like with the verdict. It's like, I don't know where I was for the verdict.
I was for the verdict. I was throwing an OJ screwdriver party because I was in college. This happened right when I was in the middle of college. So the OJ verdict came down on a day where nobody went to class at Indiana. We were throwing daytime parties. And then he's not guilty. And the party just stopped. Everyone was like, holy shit, I can't believe he got away with it. And I've always said the single most guilty moment of the entire trial is OJ's reaction to the innocent verdict being read. He can't believe it. He can't believe it. Go ahead and look at his face again. He can't believe it. Ozzy, OJ couldn't believe it. OJ Simpson got away with murder.
Look at the look in his face.
He got away with murder.
He's like, who's O.J. Simpson?
Yeah. O.J. Simpson ran for 2,000 yards in just 14 games. And that's probably all we should tell you about him. But he liked the white women, and he was bad to them. Did you read the story about did you read the story, Larry? Did you read the story about how there was this girl who worked in the USC athletic department who signed a non-disclose about Robert Kardashian and like OJ's lawyers covering up all sorts of sex abuse when he was at USC. And now that OJ is dead, she can break her non-disclosure agreement. And she's talking all about how OJ like beat several co-eds when he was bad to women, man.
Last night, the documentary. Have you seen the documentary on OJ? The 4-part documentary.
9 of them, yes.
Yeah, but the one that the ESPN played last night was spectacular. And I guess on his first date with Nicole, she came back and she had like ripped jeans. It's like that's a bad sign. And her friends were like, "Hey, why you have ripped jeans and this and that?" She's like, "Well, he's got a little handsy and this and that." Ripped jeans, and then her friend was like, "You know what?
Please leave it alone.
Why don't you get out of this?" And she was like, "Well, I really like this guy." So I mean, that's kind of where it started. Their first date, he was already ripping her clothes. But yeah, I mean,
by the way, Mark Graves, OJ, not a good kid show. Thank you very much.
It's funny. I read this story as a little kid about OJ and how he had to have braces on his legs, and it's amazing that he became this amazing runner because he had to walk around as a little kid with braces on his legs. But as far as where was I when the Bronco chase, believe it or not, I was scouting for the Sacramento Gold Miners. We were in training camp at Yuba City, and Kay Stevenson was the former head coach of the Buffalo Bills. So there was media everywhere. And we were sitting there with all the Canadian Football League players, and we had 2 TVs in our dinner room. One of them was on Knicks Rockets, and the other or I guess no, we had we had split screen. That's what it was. One TV with the split screen, Knicks Rockets, and then the OJ Bronco chase, and it was memorable. I mean, the guys were hooting and hollering, and some guys wanted to watch the basketball game, some guys wanted to watch the car chase. But yeah, I mean, it was an amazing day, really. And
it was, and
the documentary on it is, I think, on that sports day, is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen.
The 30 for 30.
Where it's just, there's no
January, June 28th or whatever it was.
Nobody's voicing it. It's just footage.
And it's amazing all that happened that day. It was like Arnold Palmer's last round at the U.S. Open. It was the Rangers throwing their Stanley Cup parade in New York City. It was the NBA Finals game.
NBA Finals. It was the World Cup. Bill Clinton and Oprah, and
the first kickoff of the World Cup in Chicago,
and all this was going on at one time, and it was a really well done deal with the other thing
Billy
about
Corbin
it
is the director of that. Billy Corbin is the guy who did Cocaine Cowboys, I believe, which is another great documentary.
It also showed how nervous Bob Costas was. They had some outtakes of Costas, and he's like, well, what do I say? What do I say? And he was sharing the screen with Tom Brokaw, and he's like, well, I've already said I'm Bob Costas. And he's like, all neurotic about, do I say the right thing? Do I say the wrong thing?
Can you hear that? That means the show is just about over here. I'll say this.
Is somebody hurt?
Bob Costas should be Larry. I mean, let's go back to that moment in time. We all kept watching the Bronco chase because we honestly thought we were going to see a person blow their head off on live TV. That's what we thought.
It was just building to a crescendo. And what about all the people? What about the react? To me, the Bronco chase, the most interesting thing was the reaction. People were lining the highway like they were lining the sidelines of a USC game, and then it's.
The morbid curiosity was reached to infinity. I mean, it was a moment in time that gave birth to the concept of reality television more than any episode of Cops, which was on TV at the time. But if not for that moment, if not for O.J. Simpson, we don't even have the Kardashians in our lives. Like, the girls watched fame and acclaim being attached to nothing, and they got addicted to it. I mean, it was just it was an incredible moment in time. And yesterday, what a walk down memory lane in terms of names we haven't thought about in years. When's the last time you heard the name Kato Kalin? Remember that guy? The guy in the pool?
I remember that guy. I played golf with that guy like 15, maybe 10 years ago now in San Ramon. And we talked about the living in the back.
Sorry.
The back room of OJ's for most of the round. Kato Kalin was a very interesting guy for sure.
And then what was he? You had Mark Furman.
Furman, who's on TV hosting a show the other day.
Yeah, dude, look, Johnny Cochran was brilliant because he took already something that was racially charged. He whipped it into racial frenzy with the whole Mark Furman just being like the single worst cop to show up and respond to that thing. And brilliant lawyering by Johnny Cochran. Marcia Clark and Chris Darden did a terrible job. And the single most guilty man in the history of murder walked. I see people saying, "Hey, but, he was declared innocent." There's nothing about OJ that was innocent. He was not guilty.
The guy who blew that, and it's funny, he escaped blame, was that Detective Van Adder. He was the guy that blew it because he had an ability to interview OJ. But at that point in history, OJ was so beloved as a celebrity that he just did a nominal breakdown of the thing and he let him walk. I mean, he could have asked like 700 more questions. He had the ability to interview him and ask him lots of questions and find lots of details. But I mean, if you're one of these people walking around saying OJ didn't do it, I mean, you really are an idiot because there was all kinds of DNA from the boyfriend's blood all over the inside of his Bronco,
his car, of his house, of his garage.
It was just like, come on. how did Goldman's blood get inside his Bronco? I mean, it's
Right.
just come on, man. I
I
mean, it's like
remember. I
stop, just
remember.
stop. You know?
I remember it was Billy Crystal talking to Dennis Miller on HBO's old Dennis Miller show. And he just asked the question out loud as this was, everyone in the world's debating everything and the validity of DNA. And this was, again, this only could have happened in the time that it happened in, because we all now know DNA evidence. We've seen enough episodes. It's been in enough episodes of Law and Order where we don't question its validity anymore. Back then they did. At least they tried to, and it worked. Again, it was a brilliant defense by Johnny Cochran. But Billy Crystal says to Dennis Miller, he's like, how many drops of blood are in your car right now? Like, seriously, like your blood, anyone's blood, just how many drops of blood do you think we could find in your car? And they found like over 35 drops of blood in OJ's car. I mean, it was, he did it. He absolutely murdered those two people. Whether he acted alone or not is the only element of the crime we don't really know about. But yeah, it was a moment in time that could have only happened in that moment in time.
A lot of people criticize Schefter for his tweet yesterday about it. Did you see that? The way,
no.
Well, just the fact that, he brings up, instead of just saying the guy died, he had to bring up the fact that he brutally murdered, that he was accused of brutally murdering. I mean, it's like,
there is no other element. It's like,
but I mean, we all know that, we all know that.
To talk about OJ without framing him as a murderer would be to write a paper on the sun without bringing up the concepts of light or heat.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody kind of knows that. You know, in his death moment, you would think that they would just say he died.
Well, what I really want to know,
I don't know that you need to bring that whole thing into it.
You think he was smart enough to write a letter that's sitting in some safety deposit box that'll be opened a year after his death that's got a confession in it? The only reason why I clicked on the story OJ died was to see if there was any sort of deathbed confession of the crime. He didn't. Yeah. But maybe he did. I mean, if he really wanted to leave his family a financial gift,
it would. I mean, it's a terrible tragedy. What happened there, and it's also the story of OJ. OJ had one of the most unique lives of anybody ever.
It's the greatest fall from grace probably ever, Larry, in American celebrity culture. I mean,
there were a lot of people that were not satisfied with what OJ, didn't do to further many causes, and that he kind of led a life where, did he even know who he was? Did he have any real identity? It's like he was not. And the fact that he buddied up to all these, the CEO from Hertz and all these guys, and became just this, he was like a singular entity and had a life that was unlike almost anybody else's life. But I mean, there's a lot there too. When I'm watching the documentary and just, he had a lot of shame about his father. He had a lot of physical problems as a child. He's, and none of it excuses anything. Of course, I'm not trying to, but I'm just saying he was a very complex guy. And yet
he searched every golf course, turned every golf course in LA upside down, looking for the actual killers, Larry. So thanks to them for that. I'm hearing some rumbling upstairs. I got to get going. Hey, the Warriors might climb out of the 9-10 game. It could happen. They can't do it all themselves. They still need some help from the league. Let's go Suns. They got the Kings tonight. And if the Kings slip back and the Warriors beat the Pelicans tonight, they could climb out of that 9-10 game into the 7-8 game. And that is a huge advantage for them if they can get there. So we'll see if that happens. I'm sorry we didn't have more time. You and I could go
Trace
on
Jackson Davis last night, by the way, 4 blocks. 4 block shots, 10 points, 8 rebounds, 4 blocks. We love that kid on draft day. We talked about it. You've been a fan of Indiana for years and obviously went there. But this guy could be the difference in Golden State. Maybe even if Golden State can somehow avoid Denver in the first round, they might be able to go on a little bit of a run.
I think they could take out Minnesota. I do. I think they could.
I think you're right.
But now again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Just get in there, get in. We're not, you ain't in it yet, but they're playing some good basketball. And as we've said, for them to have any kind of a shot in any way, shape, or form, they had to at least be playing well at this point in time in their year. And they're playing their best basketball of the entire year right now. I've got a 10-1 odds, my $100 against my buddy's $1,000 coming up, that Trayce Jackson-Davis will be an all-star by year 4 of his career.
It's amazing. They went for James Wiseman, and yet they took a kid at 57 a couple years later who's actually better than James Wiseman.
Well,
I mean, what if you had said that on draft day? Who are the Warriors going to draft? Well, it's going to be James Wiseman. Oh, by the way, he's going to be a bust, and a guy that they take 3 picks before the end of the draft in a couple of years will outplay him. I mean, the odds you could have gotten on that were amazing.
Trayce Jackson-Davis loves the sport of basketball. It's in his DNA. Literally, his dad was in the NBA. James Wiseman is in the NBA because it's the fastest way for him to make the biggest pile of money. He has no love of the sport of basketball. He is not a gym rat. The minute James Wiseman can stop playing basketball professionally, he will. Where you're going to have to rip the ball out of Trayce's like cold, dead hands. Like, he just loves the game. He's a total. He's just so fundamentally sound. I mean, he
stood up to DeAndre Ayton last night. And not only that, he just makes the right basketball play. But I'll tell you, as much as we're talking about him, it's the amazing fast evolution of Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah.
That really, I think, is fueling Golden State, because Jonathan Kuminga has gone from springy athlete to absolutely, future all-star. The way he knows when to go to the hoop, when to pass, when to pull up, how to share the ball, making plays for himself, making plays for others, making the right play consistently. Kuminga is just emerging as a tremendous player, a player that you can win with. And they've now got a nice mix of young and old, and they've got to be the deepest team in the league. I mean, their rotation is amazing. Last night, if they can get going forward what they got from their center tandem last night, watch out. And it's weird to say this, but it's like, if Steph Curry can play his game, and it's a little bit of an if because he looks like he's off some nights and this and that, but if Curry can get it dialed in around the talent that they've got a chance to make a run. They really got a chance, I think. It's amazing. Great story.
Hey, man. Thanks so much for watching today. Like and subscribe. Larry and I originally thought of making Wake Up about a 45-minute show, and because Larry and I both got big mouths and never stop talking, every show is eclipsed at least an hour. This means Ozzy, as today's executive producer, has this show running on time. Maybe the sick kid is what we need to contain all that we have to put into the show in the best 45 minutes possible. But Larry, I got to get going upstairs. I can hear the wrestling going on, and I wish everyone a fantastic weekend. Have a great weekend. The weather's beautiful. Go outside, enjoy it. Larry and I will be back on Monday with whatever happens over this weekend, and we're getting closer and closer to the NFL draft, and we thank you for taking that journey with us.
Let's go two last little chats here, Damon. James Foster says, here's some Skrill for some Pepto-Bismol, Damon.
Oh, thank you very much. We would appreciate a little Pepto-Bismol. It's good. It helps settle the tummy. I think the main ingredient there is chalk, and chalk helps settle the tummy. So you drink a little of that pink chalk and you calm down.
$4.99 gets you, a smaller bottle of Pepto, but you only need a short swig to make it work. And then we got this one from Whale and Wasp. He says, Larry, I liked the interview with Lee Koba yesterday. Interesting draft prospect. Yes, we talked a little bit with the West Virginia linebacker. And I'll tell you what I told John Lund and Krug in an elevator. I like my linebackers. And this was what I said when I had Gerald Hodges and he couldn't play dead. But you know what, Lee Koba, you aren't Gerald Hodges. I'll say that, my friend.
Who is?
And all I'll say is,
go get yourself a meat cheese. You really like it. And get some artichoke hearts. Get some, more than anything, you got to go with the lemon pepper wings. Don't go with the atomic. Go with the spicy.
Whenever Tate's belly was a little upset, we gave him a little Pepto. Again, key ingredient. Chalk.
It's funny. Tom always said, get the atomic, but then I'm always saying, then I'm going to have to go with the Pepto. And I'm caught in between. I'm torn. James Foster's donating $4.99, but it was a long time ago. James, I didn't know James then. And I was worried about the spiciness of it. So, and don't forget the minestrone. Most people call it minestrone, but I call it minestrone.
Makes it sound more Italian, and I'm dying to be more Italian at every step of my conversation. I don't even say Parmesan. I say Parmigiana.
You know what I'm going to remember the most out of this show is that Damon's kid blew chunks, and let's be honest, Damon is surrounded by a lot of weed.